Many people come to Canada for a variety of reasons all the time, whether it be to see family, friends, or just explore the beauty of the country. But before you come, some of you might need something called a TRV, or temporary resident visa. If you're a citizen of certain countries such as India, China, or even the Philippines, and there's some changes to that, then you might need to have a TRV to enter Canada. And just to clarify, the TRV is the same as the visitor visa, and it's a sticker that goes into your passport. Now, before I go any further, I mentioned that about the Philippines. There's the Philippines and a few other countries that were actually given the ability to get an ETA, which is an electronic travel authorization, which I'm going to discuss in another video. All right? But there's certain stipulations to that. Now, coming as a visitor, it's a popular way for people to first enter Canada. However, depending on your case and situation, it might not always be easy. In this video, we're going to be discussing what you need to know to apply for a Canadian visitor visa and how to increase your chances of being approved. While all approvals aren't a guarantee, there's a lot of discretion that the officer has. But there's also some AI tools that are being used by the government, and there's ways to strengthen your application and provide context so that you can articulate your purpose and how you want to visit and strategize the immigration process. The first thing to keep in mind is that when you apply for a Canadian visitor visa, you're going to need to clearly state the reason for your trip. This is important because the visa officer will need to know why you're coming to Canada and for how long. Some of the most common reasons for visiting Canada include tourism, family, friends, coming to a conference, an event, or participating in a short-term course or training program. Whatever the reason for coming here, make sure it aligns with the documentation that you're including and your application just makes sense, all right? This is important. If it doesn't make sense, it's not going to work, all right? That's what they're looking for. It just has to make sense. Speaking of important considerations, your trip must make sense by not raising any red flags, right? So for example, if you're saying that you're coming and the purpose is for your son's or daughter's college graduation, but you're planning to stay 6 months from January to June when the graduation's in August, the officer might be raising some eyebrows at your proposed trip, right? So maybe you're attending a friend's wedding in Calgary, but your flights and hotels are all reserved to Montreal. This could be something else that might need to be explained. So you got to explain these instances and make sure that you have a very good explanation, and you have to fill in the gaps of understanding. While you're not required to provide a complete itinerary of your activities in Canada, you should be able to truthfully supply the information and highlights of your trip in the country and the context of the reasons that is planned and the way it's going to be. Now, another important factor is being able to demonstrate that you have the funds to cover your trip expenses. This is important because the visa officer needs to be assured that you won't become a burden on the Canadian government or seek unauthorized employment while in Canada. If you're paying for the trip yourself, you need to show that you have enough money in your bank account to pay for your flights, accommodation, and any food or other expenses. And make sure that it's not your last savings and all the money that you have in the world, because that could actually raise some red flags as well. Alternatively, if you have somebody sponsoring your trip, they will need to provide proof of their financial ability to support you during your stay in Canada. This can be a letter of invitation or even a sponsorship letter. Now, while there's no set amount, because this is something that I get asked quite a bit, you just have to make sure that it makes sense. Unlike a super visa, your funds have to be very exact, right? But you just have to show that you have enough funds to reasonably support yourself for your trip to Canada, or explain it. The officer will or should take this into account, and there can be different factors, including the location of visit, the activities, some of the plans, expenses, where you're going to be staying. But again, if you're in like Vancouver or Toronto and you don't have any friends or family here and you want to stay for 6 months in those cities, you better show that you have the money to be able to account for your accommodation. All right. Also, while we're speaking about money to support your trip, you must also ensure that you're also in line with what would be considered normal. Now, remember I told you about this before, and I just mentioned this briefly? Well, if you're taking all the money that you have in the world and you're using every single penny, peso, rupee, drachma, whatever it is, your entire net worth to support your trip, it might be a little suspicious, right? So again, you have to provide some context to that. Now, thirdly, when filling out your application, it's important to be clear and concise. Visa officers are busy and they have a limited amount of time to review your application. And in some cases, I've heard that they only have about 8 to 12 minutes to make a decision. So it's important to ensure that your application is well organized, coherent, and easy to understand. And this means providing all the necessary information and supporting documentation and avoiding unnecessary details or confusing language. For example, if you're visiting a relative, such as a cousin, then you can outline the relationship between both of you. This can be done by providing birth certificates for you and your parents so the officer can see that you are genuine cousins. By making things easier for the officer, or at least having them for them to look at if they need to, and showing them that everything is documented, this is an easy way to make it easy for them and easy for you. Another relatively new development to keep in mind now, and certainly for the future, is that the IRCC, or the Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, the Immigration Department, uses AI systems to streamline the visa application process and make it more efficient. These systems use complex algorithms to assess applications and determine eligibility. To increase the chances of a successful tourist visa application, it's important to ensure that all the information provided is accurate, complete, consistent, especially if you've already applied to the department under another application. This means that you have to be honest about the purpose of your trip, provide the supporting documentation, and ensure that all the information is clear and easy to understand. By doing so, you can help the AI system assess your application accurately and efficiently while increasing your chances of success. On that note with AI, understanding the Canadian visitor visa process is important to ensure that you have the best chance of success. The visa officer will assess several factors when evaluating your application, including your ties to your home country, your travel history, financial situation, and of course your purpose for coming to Canada. As this is a temporary resident visa or a visitor, you must show that your stay is in fact temporary. Showing ties to your home country is important and cannot be understated, as the officer will want to ensure that you will not overstay and you're going to return. Your application should include all the necessary supporting documents such as your passport, your travel itinerary, financial statements, and it's also important to note that the visa officer may request additional information or documentation if they need further clarification. To ensure that your application is complete, it's important to review the Canadian government's document checklist for visitor visas and also from the country that you're applying from, because there are country-specific checklists as well. This may help you determine which documents you need to include with your application to make sure it's complete, such as proof of funds, ties to the home country, letter of invitation, if you're visiting friends or family, etc., etc. Remember, providing all the necessary documents will increase your chances of success. Lastly, the submission timing is essential to plan. It's recommended that you apply as early as possible, as the visa processing times can vary depending on the country of origin. The Canadian government recommends that you apply at least 4 to 6 weeks before the intended travel dates, but these times are inaccurate and you should make sure that you have enough time in case you have to reapply or combat a refusal. You must ensure that you have the time to be able to do that without missing an important event or trip you have planned. Alright? There's no sense of actually waiting too long, being refused when it shouldn't be refused, and then being approved subsequently only to miss a wedding, a funeral, some sort of special event. And I will tell you, I've seen that happen, where somebody's missed their daughter's wedding, and then it was subsequently, they came to us, we had it approved, but it wasn't done in time and they missed the wedding. Now they were essentially able to come to Canada and see their family and participate in some of the after events, but they weren't there for the big day. All right? So let's summarize. When applying for a Canadian visitor visa, it's important to clearly state the reason for your trip, demonstrate that you have the funds to cover your trip expenses, and be clear and concise in your application. By following these tips, providing all the necessary documents, and applying in a timely manner, you can increase your chances of being approved and make your trip to Canada a success. While many say that TRVs are easy, this is not always the case, as they're highly discretionary, so you should ensure that your application is as strong as it can be. Look guys, I hope this video was helpful, but again, it's really a matter of context with respect to everybody's unique situation. So, I hope to see you here in Canada soon. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more helpful tips and strategies. Oh, and if you want to get all my templates and suggestions in detail to prepare your own professional application, in the description below, you'll see my Done With You course on a TRV, where you can get everything you need to set yourself up for success and get some of those tips and tricks and some of the templates that you're going to need that'll make your life all that much easier. All right? See you soon, guys. Thanks for watching. Take care.